Hello and welcome to Open Source Workplace interview series. Today, I'm so happy to have Andrew Segal with us today. He is the president and CEO of Boxer Property, also the co-founder of Stemmons Enterprise Software. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great given the circumstances today.
Yeah, and given these circumstances, where are you finding yourself today?
Today I am working from home in Houston. Surprisingly,
Nice.
I feel like I'm betraying my office building owner credo by not being in an office building. But this is where I am today.
There you go. And not only that, Andrew, you're telling me before the amount of miles you did in 2019. And, to have someone who travels as much as that being sort of locked down, landlocked, that must be quite a challenge for you. I don't know if you to share with the audience how many miles you typically do because it's staggering.
Yeah, so it's funny. Google, as everyone knows, tracks everything you do. What you don't know is that you can see a lot of it. So I looked at the end of 2019 to see how many miles I had moved. So it could be 2 miles to the office, or it could be thousands of miles to India. It was 199,000 miles. So I figured that I was moving about 600 miles a day on average, but
That's
sleeping through most of it, hopefully on the long flights.
low flights. That's crazy. And then obviously you're in this landlocked situation now. In some of the other conversations we've had, what I find fascinating is, it's not only you who's an entrepreneur and a business owner, but also your family, your brothers, your sister, obviously very successful people as well. And I was like, what did your parents do to sort of bring up these, vibrant, curious people? And why do you think that is?
Well, I think one of the reasons was that I was raised by explorers. I was raised by people who went out into the world and were very open to what they saw. They were very open to cultures, and they would bring it home with them. Is what we ate, what our furniture looked like, the art that they collected, and I came to see exploring as one of the critical one of the critical aspects of a flourishing not only society but of a person. Is that when you go back thousands of years, the people in the original breadbasket, which I guess now would have been part of the Middle East, they were on boats, they were exploring, they were trekking places, they were bringing things back, and the societies that just stayed in place ended up really getting in trouble. They weren't able to get ideas, and I think that it's very applicable to ourselves. Is that if we get out there and find out why, give something a chance. I heard someone talk about this in terms of modern art. Is that it's very easy to stick your head in a gallery and go, that means nothing to me, or a kid could have done that. That's not for me. But if you actually go to a work of art and give it 15 or 20 seconds, and just say, what is relevant to me, if anything? Sometimes it's nothing, but the same is true about people. Is that we pass thousands of people in our daily lives and they just stream by us. But what I know is that if I grabbed any one of those people, I would connect on some level. And then we get to businesses. Is the same thing. Is that we need to look at what people are doing, and even if they're not in, maybe especially if they're not in the same business as us, ask ourselves what's relevant about this experience. What's relevant about their doing. So it kills me to for an explorer to be without a ship these days.
No, I'm sure. And obviously, the a big topic at the moment is, obviously you're locked down and you want to get out and you want to explore. And then sort of the narrative that we're hearing today is, when will we get back to work? What's that going to look like? And maybe not getting back to work's the right answer, but maybe it's getting back to the office, right? Because people are still working. And then for you, obviously, given the organizations, the business that you run, and the type of business that you run, what does getting back to the office mean for you?
So I think the answer to the question is very interesting because different people are going to have massively different experiences. So there's a macro issue that I would have totally had a different answer 3 months ago even. So this is not something that I can take credit for having the insight to realize, but I think that the pendulum is going to swing away from dense transit-oriented cities. There's four of them that I'm worried about in the US: Boston, New York, Inner Loop, Chicago, and downtown San Francisco. And there is just no way to move people in and out of those centers without them literally and figuratively touching each other, and things in the case of New York that millions of other people are touching at the same time. And if you think about the coronavirus just in a very abstract way, is to the extent that it's on the floor, it's on your shoe. And if you walk across the main hall at Grand Central Station, you're going to be covered in it. And I think we're seeing this from the results of the medical problems there. But the other thing is that the shape of work is going to be different. Is that I think that number one, we're going to have to lose the density. Is that in the beginning of my career, going back to the early 90s, a typical office had about 3 or 4 people per 1,000 square feet. So we think about that. That's social distancing. I mean, that's we would look at that as empty right now. And there were specific businesses, mostly in the big cities, like trading desks, where they had a lot more density, but they had communication requirements. They literally had to, at the time, stand up and yell at each other. Now, the fashion has been to move to the cities. That's the most valuable, vibrant areas for sure. And we've densified the offices. We've gone from 3 to 3.5 per 1,000 to, in places, even in the suburbs, people are reaching 8 and 9 per 1,000. In the cities, could easily be 12. So that's going to end. The days of walking into a firm and seeing 6 people lined up at a table, 2 feet away from each other, are going to end for some time. So our offices are going to look different. We're going to go back to a lot more personal offices. We built a co-working company. We don't refer to it as co-working anymore because WeWork has now ruined the name for the time being. But our theory was that everyone had to have a closed door. Everyone had to have their own workspace. Now, they could have space where they could interact, they could have shared services, but they had to have their own place. And we didn't know how important that would become. So I think the other thing that's going to be very interesting is we're going to disassemble offices. Is that we used to try and put everyone in the same place. So there was a densification, and that's one of the reasons why places like the Hudson Yards was so successful. Is it allowed massive areas of space where companies could take these far-flung offices that were scattered around the city and move them in. I think that we're going to go the other way, is that companies are going to have, instead of having a place in Midtown, you may have an office in New Jersey, you may have an office on Long Island, you may have an office in Westchester or Connecticut. And while we won't all be working from the same place, I do believe we're going to work from an office. And that's, we're going through a flirtation right now with work from home. And it's, in theory, it's amazing. No commute, no office cost, very comfortable. It's a very friendly type of environment. We're about to run into the buzzsaw of 2 things. Is number one, or 3 things. Number one, distraction. Is that in the beginning, you can kind of keep the discipline, but very soon you'll see that people who are working from home will end up succumbing to massive numbers of distractions and interruptions and dogs barking in the background. It's become socially acceptable now, but it's not going to be as fun, in a month from now. The second thing is labor law. Is that, if somebody is a hourly employee, they can't work 8 hours over the course of a 12-hour period the way that a gig worker or an entrepreneur might do. So to the extent that they're getting distracted and they're not on task, they can't just say, "Oh, I didn't get everything done. I'm going to work longer." That's illegal, and we're gonna run into some very interesting laws. We've got to remember that the laws from the office follow everyone
Hmm.
home. And then the other thing that I don't think that we really have a good understanding for is onboarding new people. In other words, if you've been working with a team for 5 years and you all go home and now you're video chatting and everything, there's a massive amount of familiarity, and you know a lot about each other. You've gotten people up to speed, but try and add 3 new team members who you've never met before. Um, very,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
disruptive.
yeah.
So I think that we won't be working centrally. We will be more dispersed within the office, and the offices themselves will be dispersed. And unfortunately, for some of my favorite places on earth, I think the suburbs are going to be winner. Back to suburban office, drive your own car that no one else touches to your own office. You're not going to get in a crowded elevator. You're going to be able to weather a series of these viruses without endangering yourself.
So with all that, and I'm just going to follow on. I know we're running low on time, but I just want to sort of ask one question then on the back of that. Obviously, the assumption is millennials want to be in the city. Do you see that migration out from the city center to a more urban environment, even for millennials?
So I think that people who are not commuting can be in the
Hmm.
city. So what'll happen
Got it.
is the city will become the suburb
Got it.
of the
Got it.
suburbs.
Right, 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 right. Got it. Okay. That's no. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Look, Andrew, I want to appreciate you spending the time with us and you making time for Open Source Workplace. And hopefully we get to continue this conversation and learn a lot more from you as weeks come up. So thank you. Appreciate it.
One day in person.
Absolutely. Hopefully. I can't wait for it, I tell you. Thank you.